Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Marilyn Shannon, and we are here at the Breaking Free Show. And as always, I'm so delighted to have each and every one of you join us each and every week. So thank you so much for being here. We have a wonderful show in store for you today. I'm really excited. It's going to bring me back not only to the present, but into my past as well. So I'm really excited about that. Please feel free at any time during the show when the moment moves you, when the spark moves you, to please call in. You are welcome to do that, 919-518-9773. You can also chat with us if you like. We have a beautiful chat window. Just put your name in the little box there and hit send or add, whatever it says, and you will join us as well. There's always lots of information and things going on there. And if you are by a computer and you don't have access to a phone, you are more than welcome to join us on Skype at computers, that's plural, the number 2K voice, during the show as well. And we'd love to have you, so please feel free. So let me say good morning or good afternoon to Amnan, our producer.
Good morning, good afternoon, actually. Yeah.
Here it's good afternoon.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm just fine. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Did you enjoy any of the weather this weekend?
I've enjoyed all the weather.
Okay, good.
I don't care if it's raining, I'm going to enjoy it.
No, it was beautiful.
It was beautiful. We were very fortunate to have had some beautiful weather,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Sunny and bright. I hope it's beautiful wherever you are. But wherever you are, whatever it is, enjoy it to the max, to the best that you can. And before we go on and before I introduce my guest to you, could you put up that first little slide there? Okay. I put this up each and every week so that you all know that you are invited to call in. This is your license to call in anytime you like during our show. This is your show. We do this for you. So please feel free at any time you want to share what's on your mind, and it's really important. So here we go. We're going to go on with our show, and I'm really excited about this one. So today our guest is Andrea Lankford, and she is a ranger, former park ranger. I don't know if you would even call her a former park ranger, because I think once it's in you, period. And she's written this terrific book called Ranger Confidential, where she shares about what it's like about being in a park. Yosemite, Grand Canyon, Zion, and I've been to all three of them. Can you believe that? I haven't seen yesterday's movies, but I've been to the parks. So we're going to get into the story, but it's really very cool, and it's a great book. And I would highly recommend it. I have not had a chance to finish it yet, but I'm going to tell you something. It's so good, and it's such a great read. I'm hooked that I'm going to read it because the stories are just incredible. So without further ado, let me introduce Andrea to you. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, Marilyn. Thanks for having me.
Oh, Andrea, it's a pleasure. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you. And we had a great talk before the show, so we're going to bring it all in and talk again. So tell a little bit, just, a little bit about your history and who you are so that our audience will get a good feel for you.
Sure. I was born in Tennessee. I've always been a tomboy, and I just love the outdoors and I love hiking. So I decided to get a degree in forestry, and that led me to a career with the National Park Service, which was a dream job. I couldn't see myself doing anything but that. But after 12 years of it, I saw the reality. And eventually, as the book tells, I decided to quit. And I left after 12 years with the National Park Service and did some adventuring, and then wrote about my experience in Ranger Confidential.
And you're one of the only women that have done this. How many women are there?
Well, there's a fair amount of women with the Park Service, but I was a law enforcement search and rescue ranger. And when I went to work at Yosemite Valley, this was a very macho part of the Park Service system in Yosemite Valley, real busy area. They do a lot of an arrest, a lot of body recoveries and rescues. So I was told I was a test case to see if women could handle working Yosemite Valley. I was the only permanent female ranger on the shift.
Wow. So you started with which park?
I started in Cape Hatteras, in your neck of the woods in North Carolina.
Yes, North Carolina. And then you progressed to?
Then going out west was always a dream of mine. So I got a job at Zion National Park in Utah. From there, I went to Yosemite. And from Yosemite, I went to Grand Canyon. And as the rangers say, the Grand Canyon chews up park rangers and spits them out. And that's what happened to me there.
So can you tell everybody why that is? Why do they say that? And how did that happen?
Well, the Grand Canyon is gorgeous. I love it. It's probably my favorite park. But it's a very busy place. It's a very lethal place. And I was in charge of a backcountry area, the Inner Canyon. And the years I worked there were the deadliest hiking seasons on record. So I witnessed it was stressful, of course. I did a lot of body recoveries, got frustrated with the bureaucracy, a lot of sleepless nights working all night long. So it was just a tough place to work.
Could do you, could it be any different than what it is?
Actually, it's kind of a happy ending. It's different now. While I was there, the fatalities were so horrible. We started a preventative search and rescue program, and immediately we saw good effects, and lives have been saved and continue to be saved because of that program.
So I read about the hoods in the woods. Is that what you're?
Yeah, Hoods in the
Yeah, I
Woods.
love that. That was so clever.
Isn't that
Yeah,
great?
really great. So what is that?
Well, what happened was, we were having we had 8 hiker deaths in a really hot summer, and I was desperate. And someone offered to volunteer for me with their kids. It's David Denali, and he had this youth group of disadvantaged kids. Some of them they were juvenile delinquents, some of them. And I was desperate. I said, can you come tomorrow? And they came up, and I put them on the trail. And I was nervous about it. Would they get hurt, or would they hurt somebody or do the wrong thing? But they were wonderful. They rescued 2 people the first day, and they were kind of our spearhead group of how we would use volunteers in the future to help us do preventative search and rescue.
So why was it that group that was chosen?
Because they were the ones that offered. They said we can come volunteer. And it was right when everything was happening. And I said, come, we want you tomorrow. It was timing.
I would imagine it gave them such a purpose.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Some of those kids did awesome. Some of them went into the military afterwards. We used them for many years after that. And one of the leaders of the group, he was a college graduate, Cale Schaefer, ended up being the first preventative search and rescue ranger that I hired.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah, it was just I loved the whole idea because I mean it's a win-win for everybody when you think about it.
It was a really, the Ranger Confidential has some dark stories, but that was one of the happy endings in the book,
Mm.
was the PSAR program at Grand Canyon. I'm
Yeah,
real proud of it.
yeah. I was when I was 16 or 17, I went on a teen tour uh, to the Grand Canyon, and I will never forget that experience as long as I live. I mean, we didn't hike, we went on mules, and it was, if I remember correctly, it was 3 hours down and 4 hours up. And we didn't go all the way down to where the hotel is. I think we went to one level. Maybe you can tell me where we went because I don't remember. And the one thing they told us is don't let the mules eat the grass. I don't know if they were being funny or serious,
Right.
but my mule did not want to listen to a thing I told it. I mean,
Sure.
every chance that mule had, its head was over the rock. And I mean, I was like over the rock, but I was telling Andrea back then I didn't have a fear of heights. I mean, I would do anything. I didn't care. And I remember hugging the canyon wall so much. The path was so narrow, and you had hikers coming on the same path as me and my mule. And so I ripped my shoes.
Wow.
I remember, I had my camera hooked to my belt, and was wearing a hat because of this, and
Yeah, sure.
yeah, and I was up and down so much that my camera opened up. I lost my film. I
Oh,
mean, it was quite the trip. And I remember how I felt when I got off the mule. I mean, my legs were like spread out. You know, I couldn't get them together because they were like so painful. But it was one of the most amazing experiences in my life. So, yeah, it was great for me
Yes.
on my side.
Yes, I have to ask you a question. Did you
Yeah.
get a butt blister?
You know, I probably did, but my butt was so numb I wouldn't know it. I do remember though, we were like I was on on this teen tour, so I remember we had different, we were different levels. In other words, one group would leave first, and the next group would get on the mule. So we were like all the way down, And I remember looking up and yelling to my friends up on the top, "Oh my God, you can't believe this!" And then coming down, they were like, "Oh my God, wait till you see this." I mean, it was amazing. Yeah. Do they still
Uh,
do that?
oh yeah, no, the mule trips are still go on. It's really one of the safer ways, to go down in the canyon is on a mule. But I did have one lady, bless her heart, she had a butt blister the size of a dinner plate. I felt so sorry for her for riding the mules.
No, I think mine was just too numb. I
Yeah,
mean,
well, you were young too.
yeah, I was
Little.
young, and you know, I guess I don't know, but it was the most. And I have, I'm like, could you? Here's a great. What's next? Yeah, there's a great picture of Andrea, and then the next one is a picture of her book, so you all can see it. It's a great book, and we'll come back to that. And then the next picture. Okay, here we go. That's not me, but it could have been. So there's so many stories, wonderful, wonderful stories in your book that if I said to you, tell me about this one, it wouldn't do it justice because there's so many backhand stories of just what it was like. So I just said, I thought about it this morning and I said, you know what, Andrea, pick one. Just start telling us about the stories. Like what's the first story that you would share with us today?
Okay, God, there's like you said, there's so many, but and I'm gonna think of one of the happier ones. One of my favorites, I write about a ranger, a friend of mine named Mary Littell, and she was also one of the few female rangers when I was there. And the guys didn't. She was a rock climber, really athletic young woman, and the guys she was sort of like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. They didn't want to let her, pull Santa's sleigh. And she was always fighting to be a part of that. But there's a great story in the book where she gets on a rescue on El Capitan, a real high mountain in Yosemite, real with a sheer cliff. And she ends up being the first female ranger to do a high angle rescue off of El Cap, where she rappels off a 3,000-foot cliff to rescue these men who were a little surprised to see a female ranger, female come down and be the one to rescue them. So that is a real fun story that I enjoy.
And so there was a lot of people getting. I mean, I read the story about where a lot of people not drinking enough water, huh?
But yeah, at the Grand Canyon, and this is the thing, there are people drinking not enough water and people drinking too much water. We did such a good job of scaring everybody about dehydration that some people were guzzling gallons of water and they would come down with something called hyponatremia, which basically means low blood sodium, and that will make your brain, they were diluting themselves. Water intoxication is another word for it, and it can actually kill you. And they were diluting themselves so much, they would have all this altered consciousness. One guy bit a volunteer, one guy tried to drink his flashlight.
Yeah, I
So
read that.
we were having to rescue people who had drank too much water as well as people who had drank too little.
So how many rangers were on at one, like on duty at one time, or are you always on duty?
You're sort of always on duty. You live in the park. You're always on call. They have a general alarm siren that sounds like an air raid siren, and you would hear that while you were off duty and know that you had to go back to work because something bad had happened. But it was always short staff. You have different districts, and in my district, I had as many as 9 rangers, but there might only be 4 on at one time. Then you have other districts that would have more rangers on. But we were always short-staffed for the caseload. Lots of overtime, lots of long nights.
And how? So you would just hike all over. You would just do like regular patrols, or were you just called upon when things got bad?
Both. I was the supervisor, so I also had a lot of office work and supervision, but I was also a medic, so and a law enforcement there too. So I did both. And my employees lived in cabins down in the canyon. So
Down,
they were,
down in the canyon, like down,
yeah.
down.
And so they were living there, and all hours of the night there'd be people knocking at their door with, it could be anything from, I've got a blister on my toe, to I think my wife is dead, she fell off a cliff. It could be anything that you would get called out for in the middle of the night.
What kind of training do you have to go through to do what you did?
There's law enforcement training at the Federal Law Enforcement Academy in Georgia. And also a lot of the rangers are at least EMTs. I was a park medic, which is like a paramedic, and also wildland firefighting and structural firefighting training. We wore many hats. That was part of the stress, is when you arrived on the scene, you weren't just the cop. You were the cop, you were the firefighter, you were the medic, you were the psychiatrist for everybody there. You had to do all those roles at once.
So all the park rangers, are they all that credentialed?
No, there's several different types of rangers. There's the law enforcement protection rangers, we call them. You've got your naturalist rangers that lead the hikes and teach you about the history. And there's also biologist rangers that are dealing with the bears, for example. And then you have maintenance people and administrative people, supervisors.
Uh-huh. Well, you mentioned the bear, so we got to go there. The bear, we got to go there.
Yes.
Talk to us about bears.
Well, Yosemite, the bears were, they were like Yogi Bear on methamphetamine or something. They're just breaking into cars, just walking into people's campsites, drinking their beer, eating their watermelons. It was just out of control. They were so used to human food. I had one time where 2 baby bear cubs, the mother had shoved them into a dumpster. And so they were stuck in the dumpster and couldn't get out, and the mother bear was outside of the dumpster. So I had to come up with a way to get the cubs out without getting ate by the mother bear, with a bunch of visitors watching the whole thing. The long story short, we put a log in the dumpster, and the bears eventually, the cubs climbed out of up the log and out of the dumpster.
So there was nothing you couldn't probably do, or nothing you couldn't, I mean, you had to try everything you could with everything that went on, because there were so many things that you had to address all the time, and you never knew.
You didn't. I write about, sometimes it was boring, maybe a little minor motor vehicle accident, a speeding ticket, or, you're just bored.
Right.
And you would sort of wish something would happen, and then something would happen and you'd be sorry, because it would be something,
Right.
horrible, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, sometimes it was slow.
So, but this was not just a summer job. I mean, this was an all year round job, right?
Yeah, when you start, you're usually what they call seasonal, and you work the busy season. Some parks are busier in the winter, like Death Valley and Everglades. And so some rangers are summer rangers, and I was a permanent ranger, but later on in my career, I worked full time.
Gotcha. Let's see. Here's a question from Nature Lovin' C on our chat. She says, or he says,
Yeah.
but I think it's a she.
Okay.
So what ranger specializes in the cultural and social history of the park, such as in the Great Smokies, where many people needed to move out and off of the land that was designated as a national park?
That's a great question. Those are mostly your naturalist rangers. The Park Service calls them interpreters. They're interpreting the park's history for the visitor. And some parks have historians, academic historians. The Smokies might actually have one. So the ones in the field would be your interpreter ranger that would do a program and take you out on a hike or take you to an old cabin and tell you about that story.
There's so many questions that I have, but I really want to know, what was it like for you living there personally? How was that? Did you get to leave? Did you just stay? Was it like, what was it like? I lived in New York City. I lived in Manhattan, and people, but not far from like Harlem at times and wherever. And people would say, "What was it like?" Well, it was like any other neighborhood. We went to the grocery store. We walked to here. We did this. It was like living anywhere. So I'm curious, what was it like living in the Grand Canyon?
Yeah, I don't. There's a neighbor in the Grand Canyon specifically. There's a grocery store and a post office. Um, but it's so remote. It's very fishbowl. Everybody knows everybody's business. Um, it's beautiful. You can walk a quarter mile, be at the rim of the Grand Canyon and seeing that. But also, whenever you go out to eat, you see people, or you see the visitor, and it reminds you of your job. So it's great and beautiful, but at the same time, it's a little claustrophobic and remote.
So it's been years since I've been there, so I don't remember. But it's like a town around the actual
A village. A
like
village.
a village.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's been years since I've been there. But Zion, I was telling Andrea, my husband and I went when we went on a honeymoon like 14 years ago. He wanted to go to some national parks, and I said, "Great, let's go hiking." But I'm petrified of heights. But I went anyway, and we went to Zion, and there is a one spot called Angel's Landing, which you get to you hike up, and then it's stairs, but there's nothing, there's no rope. Well, maybe it's a little metal up, right? But nothing to really hold on to. It's like
Yeah.
on the edge. Can you
Yeah.
describe? Can you describe that? Because I didn't make it there.
Yeah, I love that hike.
Yeah.
It's you go up, it's steep, and you go up the switchbacks, and there's sections where you're on a knife edge ridge or spire, and so you could fall this way or you could fall that way on either side. And it's one of the deadliest trails in the National Park Service system. So a lot of people actually do fall off Angel's Landing, and some to their death, unfortunately. And there's also been alleged murders where husbands have maybe pushed their wives off of that trail. So I love the trail. It's awesome. But the reality is it is a dangerous trail.
Well, I was telling Andrea, so we hiked up to a certain spot, and I have to real honestly, I am petrified of heights. I didn't used to be. When I was younger, I hiked in Switzerland on glaciers and into the Alps, but I don't know at what age and why things changed. Maybe I started wearing glasses. I started getting unsure of myself. I don't know. I just know I went from crazy to not so, I don't know what the other word is. But so we're in Zion, and we decide we're going to hike up here, and we hiked up, and we get to a certain spot that was flat, and then the rest of it was to go up Angel's Landing. And my husband said he would go, which of course I wouldn't. I couldn't even move off the rock without him. I just perched on this rock, just there, just period, like a bird. Oh, thank you. I'm not gonna. It's putting me back there. I'm sorry to shake. And I'm perched on this rock, and I said, "Okay, you go. I'll be perfectly fine." I couldn't even get off the rock while he was gone. So he goes up, and all of a sudden, it starts to get pitched black, dark, like the most, and it starts to get windy and all these things, and people are coming down Angel's Landing, and they tell me nobody is moving. They came down, but nobody else is moving. Of course, my husband was not one of them. And some very nice person helped me, held my hand and got me under cover a little further down, because I couldn't go by myself. My legs wouldn't go. And I just waited and waited and hoped to God my husband came down. And that was my experience on Angel's Landing. It was petrifying. And I believe
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone. I think that trail scares a lot of people.
So, what is the most dangerous park in the country? Is there a most dangerous park, or is there just most dangerous trails? To
There's both. It'll vary. The statistics will vary, but Grand Canyon and Yosemite are both probably in the top three, almost probably every year. It's improved at Grand Canyon with PSAR. But both those parks, you've got a lot of people. The Grand Canyon sort of's got this trap aspect of it because you go down into it, and so you're walking down. Oh, this is easy. And then you have to hike back up. Um, so both in Yosemite, you've got climbers and base jumpers, all these people doing dangerous things.
and you could do all of that, Andrea. Could you do all of that?
I'm not going to base jump. You know what base jumping is, right?
Oh
Where
yeah,
they
yeah,
jump.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, no, you're not going to catch me doing that. No way.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I rock climb and hike and stuff.
Oh my goodness. Okay, everybody out there, 919-518-9773. Call us anytime. Right now is a good time. Or Computers 2K Voice on Skype. Computers 2K Voice. Just put it in. Give us a holler. Enter into our chat if you like. You could ask a question in there. We'd love to have you. So what is the most dangerous place to work?
That's a good question. It's probably too very for a ranger.
Mm-hmm.
A park ranger is 12 times more likely to die on the job as is a agent for the FBI. So it's one of the more dangerous federal law enforcement job, if not the most dangerous. And that probably varies which park has Grand Canyon, for as crazy as that job was, we didn't have a ranger, haven't had a ranger die there in quite some time. So I don't know, maybe Mount Rainier has killed a lot of workers and volunteers. Maybe, I'm not sure, but that's what I'm guessing.
What do you have to tell yourself? I mean, I know I get up every day and I say, I'm just going to love the world. I'm going to be grateful for this, and I'm going to be, open to this, and I'm going to do my best, whatever, the here. And what do you have to tell yourself every day?
Well, I'm more like that now. I'm older than when I was a park ranger, more mature. But back then, you don't have time to think about it. You're competing with your peers. You want to be the one that was so brave and was a hero. And then when you're not thinking that, you're just maybe a little cynical and, oh gosh, I got to go save another person that did something stupid. So you sort of go back and forth between those two things, I think.
And a lot of good teamwork, I would imagine.
The camaraderie was wonderful. That's probably one of the things I miss the most about that job.
Yeah, I would imagine. You're like your lifeline.
Yeah, and you're sharing real intense experiences with people, that can relate to your experience. So it makes you bond. And of course, I eventually married a park ranger that I worked with. So, a lot of handsome, studly guys I was working with. So that was nice too.
Yeah, I would imagine. Woof.
Yeah.
And you have to be in really good shape. I mean, what did you do to stay in shape? I mean, was your job just enough, or did you have to watch what you eat and all that kind of stuff?
No, that was the beauty of it. You could probably eat as much as you wanted, and your job was definitely enough. Although most rangers would work out a little bit, jog or lift weights, to maintain a certain level of fitness when they're not on patrol.
What was the most intense experience you had?
Well, probably something that happened at Yosemite where I was called to someone had fallen off a cliff and I wanted to be the hero, and so I was running very fast up the trail, and when I arrived, the person unfortunately had died, and I knew her. She was a nurse at the Yosemite Clinic, and I had to shut down my emotions and take care of take care of getting her body removed from the area. But that was, pretty intense.
That's pretty intense. You had to shut down your emotions a lot just to make it through, I would think.
Yeah, now that I'm more older, more mature, I sort of, that's part of the problem, I think, is, you don't have time to deal with things and sort of sit and contemplate. And so you're just going from intense incident to intense incident to an intense incident, and then it adds up. And if you're not setting boundaries and taking the time off you need, it'll have an impact on you. It certainly did on me.
So do you mind sharing about that impact?
I was starting to get, I didn't have PTSD, but I was just getting cumulative stress from all this stuff I was dealing with. I wasn't sleeping good at night. I was getting cynical, irritable. I tell a story in the book where, I'm real snappy with someone on the phone when they call me to do something. And my peers were that way. I write about one of my peers. He was throwing flashlights, and two rangers got in a fight in the jail. One punched the other and knocked them out. So, I certainly wasn't alone in that stress, finding an outlet. There was drinking and partying, so yeah, we were dealing with it in different ways.
My brother was an emergency room doc for many years, and everybody I've ever known who has done that had to have been, you know, love the adrenaline rush because it was a constant thing in the emergency room. But yours is beats the band. I believe far more adrenaline in what you did.
Well, maybe more constant adrenaline, but just add that you're not an emergency room doctor, you're just a paramedic, and you're hanging off a cliff on El Capitan with someone with a serious head injury, and there's a lightning storm, so you can't fly him out. So you may have to do some, you may be talking to an ER doc on the radio who's telling you, oh, we're going to have to drill holes in this guy's head to release the pressure. So I don't know. That's a pretty big adrenaline rush if you ask me.
So, like now, and I want to ask you about your next book because that's your other book about folklore. I think that the haunted hikes you said.
Yeah.
I really want to hear about that. But I want to know, like, your life now. Do you miss any of that adrenaline, or you just like you go for the quiet, just the real quiet, meditative, sedentary? How is it now for you?
I'm definitely not sedentary, but I don't miss adrenaline rushes too much. I miss the camaraderie a little bit, but I'm a nurse now, and so I still have that caregiving, and there's still, a patient might get seriously ill on me, and I have to react appropriately. So I still have that
Hmm.
aspect to my life, and I still hike a lot and do adventures and climb mountains, but it's at a different pace than back then. It's definitely a slower pace, definitely more meditative. Um,
Right. Well, we need people like you. We need all of us, and I often will say that's we all make up for the whole. I mean, for the whole beingness of the earth, the planet, the country, and we need people like Andrea who have this extraordinary um, love for the what for people and taking and helping people but also what is your passion for the parks? I mean, how do you feel about these national parks that we are so privy to and so blessed to have? I mean, what is your thinking about that?
to me, they're churches and temples, so they're sacred, and they're real deserving of respect. That's part of a ranger almost gets to be too elitist maybe in their view of that, and so visitors come and they're tossing beer cans or partying too much or something, and or throwing trash, and it really upsets that sense of this is our church. You don't go to the bathroom behind the pew in the church. So we get a little self-righteous about the parks because a very powerful, profound, protective feeling rangers have over the national parks.
Wow. I mean, it is. I mean, and they're all so different. I think that's something so extraordinary that you can go from one to the other, and they're all so different. and they look different. The culture is different. I mean, on the outside, maybe the culture behind the scenes, your culture is similar, but everyone that I've been to, there's an energy about it, but it seems so different. And we are so blessed to have them, and they are so sacred. I mean, I know that when I went to Escalante, I think didn't Clinton had just made that. What did he? How did he identify Escalante? I'm trying to remember. It was he had given it some kind of seal, some kind of identification. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I'm not recalling
Okay.
that, but you're certainly right. Your instincts are good. The national park, each one has their own personality.
Hmm.
You know, some are magnificent in your face with their beauty. Some are more subtle. You have to really look at the little teeny tiny wildflower, for example. They definitely, they're, to me, they're characters.
Okay.
They're all have their own personality.
How do we identify something so extraordinary like that? How do we find them? How do we make them into a national park, and how do we identify them as a national park?
Well, there's a long history of that. I think, more recently, there are areas that are already owned by a government entity, either a state or the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, or Forest Service, and the powers to be just decide that we need to give a higher level of protection and designate it a national park area. And there's some controversy to that because the national park, I'm sure you're familiar, is hurting financially, and so adding more units to the system taxes the resources of the agency. So some people believe maybe enough is enough. Let's focus on the more historic, pristine areas. I don't know the answer to that question, but that is one of the controversies.
Well, I know that I've had friends who have moved, let's say, to New Mexico, onto national preserve land that's a national preserve, and their homes they're developed, but they have to be developed in such a way that they don't disrupt the preserve. So maybe that's. I just find it fascinating, and I just think that we don't, and people don't take enough advantage of them. I don't think. I guess. I mean, there's so many places to see and experience that maybe if we saw them more, we'd take more pride in them. I
Yeah,
want to
I
go ahead.
think so, but I think you can get that same feeling, in your own backyard, in your own garden, or your own neighborhood park. Um, there's you can still get that connection with the natural world just walking down your street, I think.
It's very true. I just came when I was coming into the studio, which is behind Amnan's office. There's flowers all over the place, and it's like an oasis. And I was thinking about my dear friend Debbie, who might be, I think she's on the chat. And I was mentioning to Amnan's wife as I was coming in that it reminds me of Debbie, who is a dear friend whose house also has beautiful orchards and flowers and just beautiful, like a sacred space. So you're right. We can create those in those places anywhere for the most part. Um, I want to show. Can you show the slide of Andrea's book again? I love this book, and when Chris gave it to me after she read it, Chris is our co-producer. She said, "Oh my God, you're gonna love this book," and I'm like, "Really? I mean, it's about rangers. Am I really gonna love this book?" I have to tell you that I really love this book, and I highly recommend that you go read it. It's extraordinary. The stories. Um, you get more than a glimpse into what we're talking about and what goes on in our parks and how our parks are, and I really think you'll enjoy it. And it's a great story. It's not just your everyday nonfiction. It's really beautiful. So I highly recommend that you read it. Talk to us some about your other book, because I find that also extremely fascinating. The one, Haunted Trails.
Yeah, Haunted Heights.
Heights, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, that was so fun to write and research for me. I had fun with it. I love the X-Files. Remember that TV
Yeah.
show? And so I just love that show. And so I was kind of inspired by that. Although all the stories in Haunted Hikes are true, there might be legend, but it's a true legend that actually exists. And so I wanted to write, because as a ranger, you go to a campfire with other rangers, and maybe you're sharing some whiskey, and people start telling stories of things they had seen or heard in the park that they couldn't explain. And so I knew there was all these supernatural elements of stories that weren't being documented and that the visitors knew nothing about. And so I decided to just attack that and just find all these stories and put them down to paper. And I told them truthfully, but did it with a real kind of tongue-in-cheek sense of humor as well. I also wrote about unsolved cases, murders in parks that hadn't been solved yet. So I loved writing that book. That was just fun.
So give us a story. Tell us a story about one of those particular hikes. One of those stories you heard.
Yosemite is a great park for that. The Native Americans that did not live in the park warned the first whites that came to the area, warned them that Yosemite Valley was the valley of death and evil spirits. So very superstitious about Yosemite Valley. And there's a waterfall that we call Bridal Veil Falls. The local tribes called it Pohono Falls, and that Pohono means evil wind. And they had stories of a maiden that was collecting berries near the top, and she became so entranced with the beauty that she just like hypnotized, just walked. She's at the top of the fall, and she just walked to the edge and allowed the water to rush her over the edge to her death. And the kind of creepy thing about that is every year they've got signs up warning people don't get so close to the edge of the waterfall, and they still do it. It's almost like they're hypnotized and they are washed over the fall, and unfortunately most of them die.
People don't listen, I guess. Well, I know they don't on some level, but wow. So that folklore story just continues.
Yes.
It becomes real.
And that's what I was seeing, it's almost, I wonder if to the Native Americans, it was like a safety sign to tell this ghost story about this evil spirit that might push you off a waterfall. It was a way to, maybe that's what Park Service needs to do, put stories up about Pohono at the top so it'll stick in their mind more maybe.
Yeah. I remember, and I don't know if it was in Yellowstone or Yosemite, but I remember a place called Mirror Lake.
Yes.
Where is that?
That's in Yosemite Valley.
Yosemite Valley.
And there's a story in Haunted Hikes about Mirror Lake.
Oh, could you tell me, please? Because I was there.
Yeah, a young woman was stabbed on the trail to Mirror Lake in the 80s, and they never solved it. And there's a lot of people there. It's not a remote area. It's so like within a matter of a minute or less, between people seeing her alive and then seeing her dead, someone stabbed her and got away. Still unsolved to this day.
Yeah, I have a friend who's been on the show before who's a similar thing happened in Virginia at a daughter came out of rafting and unsolved mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are there any other stories, whether they're unsolved crimes or any of the other hiking folklore stories that you can share?
Oh yeah, there are tons of them. I'm trying to think one of my favorite ghosts. Some of the funny, silly ones is there was a sex-starved female Sasquatch in Olympic National Park that was apparently accosting male campers, and there's so many. Let's see, pick a park.
Pick a park?
Yeah, pick a park. See if I can come up with some.
Oh, pick a park.
Oh, you're talking about Appalachian Trail, right?
Yeah. Talk about, because I went on there too.
There's a place called Scare Rock, and this rock on the trail.
Where is it? Where is it, Andrea? Which part of
Virginia, near the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Okay.
And that rock, this goes way back. I looked up what story from long ago in oral histories, and there was a slave owner that lived near this Scare Rock, and he was cruel man, And one day he rode by that rock, and this big weird creature came out from behind the rock, and he was so spooked. He and his horse, galloped all the way back to his house, and he told somebody that he had seen this scary thing at this rock. The next day, they went to wake him up, and he was dead. So now they call that rock Scare Rock.
Wow. Whew. What great stories.
Yeah.
What great stories. Chris is asking for you to tell us the story about the sea turtles at Cape Hatteras.
Oh, yeah, I get asked that a lot. I was a young ranger at Cape Hatteras, and it was my first time to be a ranger. And, I was young. I wasn't sure if this is what I was going to do or not. And they made me work the early shift. So I had to get up at 5 in the morning, which when you're young, you're like, really? And I would get up in the morning, and I was told to look for tracks every morning on the beach. And so one day I saw the tracks of big tracks coming up, and then it's where a turtle had laid her nest. And then I'm supposed to find the nest, and then we would, if it was below high tide, or we would move it to a safer location. And the eggs are like little ping pong balls, really cute. So then it was about 2 months later, I would be driving by, and I discovered that one of these nests had hatched, and all the little baby sea turtles were coming out of the nest. And it was just so touched me and moved me. And I picked up one and held it in my hand. And I knew then that this was my calling, that I would risk my life to protect these turtles. See, so it makes me tear up right now just talking about it. It was a very profound time for me.
Wow.
It's where I committed to the job.
So to protect what?
All the nature and the wildlife therein. That's the Organic Act and the National Park Service. And so there's also a saying, motto that park rangers have, and it's protect the park from the people from the park, and the people from themselves. So you're trying to protect all those things at once, and sometimes they're in conflict with each other.
That is one heck of a juggling act.
It was. It still is, obviously, for the rangers working today.
So who do you have the most, I don't even know if this is a fair question, but who do you feel the most allegiance to, the park or the people?
I think at first it might have been the park to some degree, but later on especially at Grand Canyon, people were really dying on me and my peers and my employees. And so I began to kind of have a love-hate relationship with the park, where I was afraid of it as much as I loved it. So yeah, it was a kind of a bizarre position to be in.
I mean, these parks talk, don't they? I mean, they communicate.
Yeah, they do. Sometimes I would feel like certain areas of the park held grudges. If you didn't act respectfully while you were traveling there, you put yourself at risk of having an accident.
Amazing. So you're married now, right? And your husband, is he
Yes.
still doing what he was doing before?
He's something similar. He's a special agent, which is like a detective for the Forest Service, which is different than the National Park Service, but has a similar mission, where they're protecting national forest.
He's got a big job too. There's a lot to protect.
Yeah, and parks experience this too. They have people growing illegal marijuana farms in the forest. So that's kind of a dangerous aspect of their job, dealing with that. Fires, arsonists, people setting fires.
That kind of thing just leaves me speechless. I mean, here you have this most magnificent thing, and people just, this might seem incidental, but we work out at a health club, and there's a sign that says, "Nobody in the hot tub, 12 and under." It's reserved. Right. And yet I turn around and I'm seeing little kids in the hot tub, and I'm like, why are you doing that? I can't get over the fact that people put their little kids in a hot tub like babies. in a
Yeah.
hot tub. I don't get it. Anyway, yeah.
Well, you can relate to a ranger at Grand Canyon seeing someone hiking with high heels and flip-flops, and they've had people rolling their suitcases down the trail, just really silly stuff, carrying coolers down the trail.
For just a little while.
Yeah,
And then all of a sudden that trail gets you and you think, oh, what's the
exactly.
first thing that's going to go? The heels, the
Yeah,
cooler.
exactly.
It ain't going to last.
Right.
What's your, so Chris, Debbie is asking, this is interesting. How do you approach dangerous people today? Like if you get a sense of somebody dangerous, how do you approach them?
Today versus back then
Yeah.
when I was carrying a gun.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I don't think I encountered that many dangerous people. We talked earlier, I hiked that entire Appalachian Trail and people by myself, and people often ask me, well, were you afraid of people? Did you carry a gun? And I thought it was perfectly safe. I think also what happens is because I used to be law enforcement, my presence just sort of puts out this, I don't know, I wouldn't mess with her kind of thing.
How big are you? How big are you?
I'm not that big. I'm 5'7",
Uh-huh.
132 pounds, not that big. But yeah, I just don't really feel like I encounter that many dangerous people. But I one time I was camping in Mexico with a friend, and there were some guys camping nearby, and we were sleeping in the back of my pickup truck, and it was dark, and this drunk guy stumbled into our camp, and I was out of the truck like a German shepherd at him, just, you do not do this, get back to your campsite, yelling at him. And he was like, whoa, whoa, I'm sorry, and backed up. So he probably wasn't dangerous, but I did not like his behavior. So I was just in his face right away.
So do you have an element of being fearless?
I think I'm realistic, but probably, yeah, there's probably I think I'm confident. I'm confident that I'll be able to handle a situation. I think that's a better word than fearless.
And where do you get that confidence from? Like how are you confident?
Well, now at this age, I think, I've just got a whole all these experiences, to give me that confidence. So I think it comes from pushing your limits a little bit, and,
So,
not being afraid to, and then you get more confident each little step forward.
and so how do you define breaking free?
Well, yeah, I think you come right to a good segue there. I think it's going beyond crossing your fear barrier, walking past that line of where you start to feel a little afraid. Walk past that, whether it's quitting your job and doing something different, or rappelling off a rope to save somebody, stepping past that point where you were afraid.
Because I would imagine, you were afraid. Every time there are a lot of times that I come here and I'm a little afraid. I'm going to be live. I'm going to be talking to somebody maybe I don't know. I'm a little afraid. I would imagine you had a lot of fear that you were able to go over that barrier in your job on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I still do now. I'm a nurse now, and when people are sick, there's something a little scary about that. Am I going to be able to take care of them right? Am I going to make a mistake? Am I going to be sensitive? Are they going to feel cared for by me, by my tone and what words I choose to say? So, yeah, even being a nurse is a little scary, I think.
But you have experience breaking free on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I do. So I don't think I really have a problem doing it. I just do it. I kind of focus on somebody's got to take care of this person. It doesn't matter whether I'm afraid or not. This person needs me. So I'm going to do it.
Right. So your personal mission is in the forefront of that fear, and that helps you get through it.
Yeah, I think that's a great conclusion. Yeah. It's like when I was a ranger, protect the park, protect the people, and protect the people from each other. That was so motivating for me to go beyond my fear.
Yeah. Big job. Big job. Well, we're almost out of time. But before, don't go yet. Don't go anywhere yet. Could you put up the, there we go. Okay, we saw that, right? Next one. Okay. I have a book on my website about leadership skills. Please go to my website, MarilynShannon.com, if you want to break free. That's one way to access your leadership, and you can go to MarilynShannon.com and find that. The next thing is I use a platform, some of the work that I do, called Zoom. It's a great platform. If you go to my website, you'll see it. If you do any kind of meetings, workshops, any kind of trainings at all, it's a great way to do them. I highly recommend it. It's very worthwhile. And the next one, and this is my listening manifesto, which is how you break free, by listening to yourself and taking listening to multiple levels. So it's on my website. It's free. Go get it. It's like a personal way to find your independence, because once you turn on that listening, you can break free, you can cross over those barriers, you can listen to yourself and other people, and you know how to perform in different situations. So that's there, and that's all I have to share. But I wanted Andrea to take, that's my favorite things. Yes, thanks, I forgot about that. I have a place on my website for my favorite things. Books I've read or books somebody else told me about, products from other people, artwork, whatever it is. If you have it, let me know. You can write to MarilynShannon.com, and I will put it up. So Marilyn@MarilynShannon.com. Andrea, could you, in our final moments, kind of sum up for us whatever wisdom you want to leave with us today? It's all yours.
Yeah, I think I would say, you could do it. Don't let fear inhibit you. It's okay to feel the fear and contemplate it. It's a useful emotion, keeps you safe, but don't let it get the best of you.
And if you were going to recommend for our audience a park that maybe for people who haven't been to a park yet, which park would you recommend?
Oh my gosh, that's the kind of question to drive a park ranger crazy, because they're so great.
That's why it's the last question.
Yeah, so I'll say Blue Ridge Parkway on the East Coast, and on the West Coast, I'm going to give you a kind of a little one people don't know about, Oregon Caves in Oregon, Southwest Oregon.
Yeah, the Blue Ridge is fabulous, really. Yeah, we get to enjoy, we go up there a lot. We go up to like Banner Elk and off the Blue Ridge and all those kinds of places.
I love it. I love it there. I love it back there.
Great hiking, great visuals, just magnificent things to see. And Oregon I haven't been to, so that might be on my list next. Fabulous. And any other words about just park rangers in general? Anything that you want to share with us in closing?
Oh, that they're interesting. They're not just Boy Scouts, with that Smokey Bear hat. They have very interesting personalities and have very interesting experiences. So they're more complicated than you might think.
And if anyone out there has an opportunity to bump into one, you might hear some great stories. So you might want to take a few minutes and chat a bit, because I guarantee you're going to hear some things that they're a wealth of knowledge, and they're a big container for a lot of things. So Andrea, thank you so very much for joining us today. It has been really exciting, and I could go on and on and on. There's so much to learn and hear, and your writing is extraordinary. So thank you for that, because it made it so much easier to read about these things. So I really appreciate it. And you've been a great guest, and for everybody out there, I want to thank you so much. Final word, Andrea.
Thanks for having me. Everybody have a great summer.
Terrific. Thank you, everyone. Nice to see you here. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVBI members, The Tanya Love Show, Your Healthy Pet with Gisela DiCarlo. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.